Good morning. I hope you're okay. My name is John Waihenya. I'm a fourth year student at DSTA. I have a double concentration in print and electronic media, and I'm greatly honored to have you as my professional announcer interviewee. I actually came by your craft via Nick Ndeda, who posted your podcast, the intro, and then I realized I've had this voice before, maybe on radio, I don't know, and I realized I've had the voice before, and I immediately subscribed to your podcast, and I've been an obsessive fanboy ever since, like January.
Wow.
The conversations you have are honestly wholesome and legitimately refreshing. So when I was doing my research, I realized that you're like a jack of all trades, a master of none. You have so many titles under your belt. You're a podcaster, a broadcaster, a poet, a voiceover artist, a communication professional, a radio host at Hot 96, a hip hop artist, and a recovery creative, if I will. How did you assume all these titles, like chronologically?
Man, okay, first of all, the conversations in and around the nexus and how all these things join,
Yeah,
I tend to tell people that everything has its nucleus, right?
yeah,
And so everything for me stems out from the purpose that I have as a person. And that's to always create an environment where there's this healing, there's inspiration, there's a lot of that.
yeah.
And now from that, everything ebbs and flows. So I remember first and foremost when I was in Daystar, because I was in Daystar,
Yeah.
uh, you know,
Oh, nice, nice.
I actually didn't study electronic media.
Really?
You know, it's crazy.
What was your
People used to
major?
tell public relations.
Really? Oh,
Can
I'm
you
shocked.
imagine? Can you
Yeah, because
imagine that, you know?
your voice sounds so like electronic media major. You underwent all this.
And I
Hassles.
was actually, I was having this conversation with myself even before this interview.
Yeah,
And I said, I like to be as honest as possible.
yeah.
I think there was some naivety on my side, if I'm to be very honest, because by the time I was joining Daystar, I was already a musician. My music had been playing for
Oh,
years, and
wow.
my poetry was already out there. And so I was like, why do I need to learn about using my voice or this type of things? I was like,
Wow.
I said I can learn those things later,
Yeah,
but let me learn, public relations.
yeah,
But looking back, I'm not saying that the public relations course was not good. It's taught me so much,
yeah,
but I wish that I would have invested more time
yeah,
in broadcast when I was in Daystar, because you have all the facilities.
yeah,
Um, you can make great relationships within that circle as well.
yeah.
So yes, back to your question. Chronologically, I started off, and I say that I learned and I honed my craft as a broadcaster through my poetry,
Yeah.
because I've been doing poetry for about 2 decades now.
Whoa, whoa.
And yeah, and so that's where a lot of this started from. and
Yeah,
and then I started reading my poetry, and then I got heavily into music. Then from there is when a lot of these things started transitioning. um, I got into radio shortly after leaving Daystar.
oh,
My first job on radio was as a radio host on Classic 105.
really?
That's where I started my career. Yeah.
It was so easy for
Now,
you. Was it
no,
easy?
it was no, not at all, not at all. Especially because around that time, I told God, like, here you need to help me out, because I had this deep feeling in me
Yeah,
that He wanted me to take a 1 year break to kind of get my head in order
yeah.
after university. And so this was 2012. And so I had two opportunities. One was in advertising,
Yeah.
and one was radio. And I remember being like, oh man, I don't know which you want me to do, God. Like, what do you want me to
Yeah.
do? And I just said, um, whatever you want me to do, like just close the door that's not of me, even if it'll feel more beneficial. Take me in the direction that you know is my purpose to go in. I
Yeah.
had a great interview on the advertising front. They never called back.
Oh.
Um, and yet they were like, yo, we love you. And on the radio front, it took about maybe like 4 months, and it was crazy because like you're up against so many people. And around that time, actually, they were looking for students, and I told them I'm not a student. Like I've literally just finished school, so if that disqualifies me, it's okay. I don't want to take this opportunity from anybody else. And there's just this whole protracted back and forth and all these type of things. But late 2012, I joined Radio Africa Group, and with the help of let me just shout her out because it was very weird.
Yeah.
Caroline Mutoko and
Oh.
Karthik Ageni. Caroline called me when I was in a bus. I
Yeah.
was just in a bus, and she was like, "Hi, is this David?" I'm like, "Yeah. Who is this?" This is Caroline Mutoko. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, right." I'm like, I'm waiting for somebody to be like, "Got you,"
I
And she's
know.
like, "I heard about you, and I'd really love to meet you, and can we
Oh.
meet on Wednesday?" I'm like,
Oh.
"Okay." I said yes to all these things, just waiting for the end to be like, gotcha. The gotcha
Yeah.
never came, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is actually her. And we met,
Oh.
and we had a 4-hour conversation. Um,
Whoa.
yeah,
That's
just
so cool and
it
awesome.
was so great. John, it was so crazy. Like we were talking like we were friends in that moment,
Whoa.
and she asked me a very critical question that I
Yeah.
I ask anybody who wants to get into broadcast or into anything that puts your face or your voice or your writing in public.
Yeah.
She asked me why is radio your passion? I told her radio is not my passion. People are my passion.
Whoa. That's
And
powerful.
I
That's powerful.
y- and
Yeah.
I told her that if I get this opportunity, then I'll steward. I don't like the word use. I'll steward radio
Yeah.
to enhance my passion for people, and that's been the story ever since. So I started at Classic 105, then shortly I started doing Classic 105 and Radio Jumbo,
Yeah.
and then from there I joined Family Radio.
Yeah.
I was doing breakfast on Family Radio,
Whoa.
and I was the head of radio as well. Shortly after, I was in charge of the entire radio station. And then I took a break to write my book.
Yeah.
Um, then I got called by Hot 96 in 2015, March. So that's when I started at Hot 96 as a breakfast radio host. I was
Yeah.
doing the morning radio show for about almost about 3 years. Then I started doing a show before that, which was mostly inspirational, as the other individuals who came into breakfast, Jeff Koinange,
Yeah.
started doing that show, and I would help co-produce it once in a while. And then from there, I got an opportunity at Standard Group
Yeah.
on KTN, where I then left Hot 96, and I got into television, which was a big leap because now primarily I've been an English broadcaster, and I
Yeah.
was thrown in to do a Kiswahili talk show.
Oh,
Uh,
how's that?
it was crazy. At first, I didn't really think that I could do it,
Yeah.
but then it was a challenge, and I had to take the challenge up, and I just dug deep. I started remembering my Radio Jumbo days, and
Yeah.
I just had to dig really deep, and it was a success. I had a show there for about 1.5 years, while also being their official TV station voice for two of their
Yeah.
stations. And then from there, I just got into my own business, which I'm running now, which is an audio consultancy where I provide voiceover services to
Yeah.
hundreds of clients locally and internationally. So that's been the trajectory.
Wow. Like I feel like you've had so much experience. Like you're now like a seasoned voiceover artist or like a broadcaster now, especially with like Swahili. I remember I had it when you said it and how it was difficult, but you still took like yeah, you took that challenge and you aced it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Oh yeah, and you had mentioned I do have the podcast,
Yeah,
um, which is the David Oyuke podcast, and
yeah,
I'd be so happy if you guys subscribe. I haven't posted an episode of late because, like you were sharing, for me, we recently lost our gran,
oh,
and so
my
there's just been a
sincere
lot of up.
condolences.
Thanks, man. It's my wife's grandmother,
Yeah,
and so it's been really tough. So I just put some things on hold just to be able to be there with the family and
yes,
just be there
yeah,
emotionally, because like I also talk about that in the podcast where
yeah,
there's a whole demand on us being authentic, yes, but then as much as we're being authentic with what we're doing,
yeah,
I think it's also imperative for us to be authentic with what we're going through
exactly.
and whatever is happening on the inside.
That's true.
So I haven't posted an episode, but I have episodes in the can,
Yeah,
just editing them, and hopefully soon I'm going to post two more episodes very, very
yeah,
soon.
can't
Yeah.
wait. Stoked about that. So my next question is, I'd like to know how your educational background informed your career and how relevant it is to your current profession.
Great question. Especially how we already spoke about public relations versus
Yeah,
broadcast
yeah, because
media. At first I was feeling a little bit of guilt at first. I was like, okay, oof. Now like everything has gone 360. Now I'm in front
I
of a
know.
microphone. Now I'm working the board and the mixer, and I'm like, oh my word. Like I remember because I did some elective courses in,
Yeah,
in broadcast, but they were just elective courses, and
I
I'm
know.
like I did 4 years of something else. But
Like,
here's the catch. Um, being a broadcaster, and in this case, because of this context, an announcer, but being a broadcaster is not just about you being an orator or just speaking.
yeah,
You have to be very critical about how you pass on a message. So
yeah,
I think it was very critical for me to understand how to relate with people, or
yeah,
what is called in public relation publics. And that has been an immense treasure for me on this journey. I bring that into how I write my scripts. I bring that into how I change my tone in
yeah,
terms of when I'm delivering a voiceover, or even when I was on air, because you just can't have the same tone when you're
yeah,
having certain conversation. There are peaks and there are lows,
yeah,
there are constants, and it's also good to have the proper emotional response and not just be robotic, because sometimes you can be very robotic,
yeah,
where it's just let's go to the next.
yeah,
But I think dealing and understanding a little bit of public relations taught me a little bit about having a higher emotional intelligence. Let me put it that way. So I've brought in that aspect of emotional intelligence into my writing and into my broadcasting. Yeah.
yeah. I actually like does feel that, especially when I live and listen to your podcast. Like you have inflection, your voice is so dynamic. Like I resonate with that. But I also like have challenges myself because like I really have terrible anxiety and
Mm.
my voice tends to like stress. But like this was what this course was geared to, and learning how like to have a professional voice over and like yeah, yeah,
Mhm. On the anxiety front, because again, um, there are many people in this field that go through anxiety. But one thing that we're taught is that once the camera is on, don't show it. Once the microphone is on, don't
yeah,
show it. And to one on one side, I understand that, but I think equally, full stop
yeah,
there. We should put a comma and say, don't show it on the microphone.
yeah,
But once you are done with the microphone, do not be afraid to open up those emotions to other people who can help you and to be there for you. And I
exactly.
think that for me is very crucial, because I still speak with so many broadcasters until today, and
Yeah,
they share about their anxiety, they share about all those things. And again, I think it's because of that leaning of public relations that kind of gave me an understanding of my emotional intelligence to understand, okay, when I'm speaking to people who would understand what I'm talking about, then I would be very vulnerable, because when my radio shows were very vulnerable. I would say, this is what I went through yesterday. I would say, this is how I'm feeling. And they would say, wait a minute, this guy's actually telling me what I'm going through, you know? And for me, that's real. That's the wealth of why we use the gift of our voices, our writing, and all these different abilities.
Oh, that's powerful. Because I feel like in communication, we're just told, we're given this articulation drills, but we're never taught how to be emotionally intelligent. Like that's like you're supposed to work on yourself. So I feel like maybe like that's a really great takeaway on how public relations informed how you emotionally relate to people. Yeah. So my next question is, what were the early positions you held in the broadcast field or any other relevant field?
My position in broadcast, like I said,
Yeah.
was on Classic 105, and I started doing what is called the graveyard shift. So I
What's that
had,
about?
like the show, everything outside and everything. So I had a show from about 12 to about a.m. It was just to train me, and funny enough, when I came in, I was coming in as a trainee, and we're supposed to have maybe about 6 months before we go on air. I went on air like less than a month, which for me was just woof, it was crazy. My first ever experience was, I enjoyed it so much, only to realize that I was not broadcasting.
So,
Nothing was going on air. Like
okay, that's a bummer.
my program, a guy I really admire. He's called Pete Sinclair.
Yeah.
So Pete came. He gave me a call. He's like, "Yo, matey, where are you?" He's Australian. He's like, "Matey, where are you?" I'm like, "I'm in the house." He's like, "What are you doing in the house? Can you come in?" I'm like, "Okay." And so I get there, and it's like, I want you to man the board. And I'm like, okay, I'll just sit in stool and just man the board, right? But then, like a few minutes later, he comes and he brings me a pair of Sennheiser headphones, and he says, "You're going on air in the next 2 minutes." I'm like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Well, wait, what are you talking about?" And then he says, "Whatever you do, don't press this button." But he didn't realize he pressed it when he was saying that. So I didn't touch anything. And the funny thing is, when that time came, I was broadcasting. I enjoyed it, and like properly segueing from music, back announcing, pre-announcing, doing all those things. And then I think it was the next day, he comes and he asks me, "Oh, matey, how was the show?" I'm like, "Oh, I loved it. It was amazing." He's like, "Oh, you really did?" I was like, yeah. He's like, "Then why weren't you on air?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Your voice wasn't on air. Did you press the thing I told you not to press?" I'm like, "I didn't touch anything." So for me, that was my first ever on air, not on air experience. And from there it flowed, and I really enjoyed it. I moved from the graveyard shift, and I started doing the weekend afternoon shows as well, from 2 to 6 on Sunday. Just playing some really nice thematic music. Just being now properly like an announcer, not really a presenter per se, but just started out announcing, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice. This course takes aim at covering the major aspects of radio and television delivery processes, and the course highlights how broadcast delivery is through voicing and announcing. The class featured heavily articulation drills, tongue exercises, abdominal, diaphragmatic breathing for good vocal production, articulation and articulation. So, do you personally engage in articulation, breathing, voice, and how do you have an analysis of your broadcast copy before going on air? Yeah.
Uh, all the time. And I think for me, I love it, but it doesn't feel like work for me.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person, I never pass up an opportunity to read billboards when I'm in a vehicle,
Yeah.
you know,
I share the
like
same
it's,
sentiments.
I see a billboard and all of a sudden, like I read it as though I'm on air, and then I also read it as though I'm doing a voiceover,
Whoa.
and so like I would see something and then I'll be like, Caton Airways gives you 30% off, and
Yeah.
I'll just start going, and I love it. I do a lot of research until today on different exercises,
Yeah.
breathing, working your diaphragm, like you've talked
Yeah.
about, tongue exercises. Because again, when you're in the field now, when you're that close to the microphone and when you have things like proximity effect,
Yeah.
then you have certain elements of your tongue that can seep into a recording.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between a live recording and a produced recording. And if it's a live recording and you just have your pop sounds and your clicks and your tongue sounds and then
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do about that in that moment. But then there are exercises you can do to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And the world has become a very interesting place. There's even things that you can take to dry up your mouth and just different things. But yes, I do a lot of those exercises. I love doing research on how to improve as a broadcaster and as a voiceover artist. And for me, it doesn't feel like work. Like I can sit the whole day
Yeah.
and do all that. I absolutely love it.
Wow. So I feel like you're passionate about it, and I even feel it like from your voice and your delivery. I'm like, I'm sold. I'm sold. I'm subscribed to this. So, what is your like favorite exercise among them? Like before you go on air, like or before you host your podcast, how do you get your voice, yeah, into the element?
I exercises.
Yeah.
Um, Additionally to that, I love doing pre-reads, right? So what
Yeah.
I do is I do a lot of pre-reads, like in various formats. I can do a high pitch, I can do a low pitch, I can do a
Oh,
mid-range,
yeah.
just so that I can also get the rhythm
Yeah.
of how I actually want to pronounce or enunciate, so that my diction is correct,
Yeah.
so that my breath control is correct, so
Yeah.
that I just don't start breathing properly when the microphone is on.
Yeah.
I want to culture myself in terms of, okay, this is how this read sounds, or this is how I want to bring this thing across. Let me try and, implement it before I actually switch on the microphone.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of tongue exercises. Tongue twisters
Yeah.
are really good. Tongue
Yeah.
twisters are actually very good. I suck at some of them, but
Me
but
too, because like we've been given a bunch, like that's like 6 documents we're supposed to have articulation, tongue exercises, and like when you're going through them, like your mouth just sleeps, and
yeah,
you're expected to be graded. So it's like, but you still
yeah,
try. So I
yeah.
feel that.
Yeah, so tongue a lot of broadcasters and voice of artists as well tend to do a lot of tongue twisters,
Yeah,
just to be able to just get them there, just that extra push. And then it's also fun. So it helps to relieve any
yeah,
anxiety that
yeah.
you may have. Yeah.
How important do you feel that your practical experience is in the professional announcing?
Oh, it's extremely important, especially for someone like me. I had only like maybe 5% theoretical knowledge,
Yeah,
and 95% of it was,
yeah,
like literally in the doing of the thing and learning on the job. Um, but I also feel that theory is you can't take away the theory,
yeah,
because look at me right now. I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm also going back you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you understand, like
Yeah.
I love learning,
Exactly.
and I notice certain gaps. And even
Yeah.
if I become the greatest broadcaster in the world at some point,
Yeah.
I'll always want to learn and continue learning. So I'll always
Yeah.
want to go back and read
Yeah.
and look at context and look at
Yeah.
scenarios and look at situations so that I can understand, yes, this is how I do it. But I also want to learn, how was this doing? How did it
Yeah.
come about? You
Yeah.
know, and there are times you realize you can think that you're doing something so naturally because
Yeah.
you've not read about it, only for you to realize that it's been done before, which
Yeah.
shows you that there's so much more, more than I am able to do this. There's a whole story behind it,
It's true.
you know. And so I'm a proponent of the balance between theory and practice,
Yeah.
because it makes us more effective.
Yeah.
Uh, and if we're just looking for the bare minimum, then we can shuffle between I can pick this or I can do that. But
True.
if you want to
True.
be effective, then I believe strongly that you have to have a proper balance
Yeah.
of theory and practice.
Mm. Fair enough. I even remember how you said how you love reading because it captures your imagination and informs you. And yeah,
Hmm.
I also relate to that deeply.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, what job or event represents the zenith and the peak of your career?
Hmm. Whew. Um, I've had so many interesting moments. I don't even know which one to say is the peak, um, depending on how we're measuring it.
Yeah.
If it's in terms of like hierarchy, in terms of on air, then I
Yeah.
can say then being a breakfast radio host, because on radio sometimes it doesn't get bigger than that. You know,
Yeah.
it was absolutely great. You get to handle so many different conversations, from hard-hitting political conversations
Yeah.
to, you know, in one moment you're having a hard-hitting political conversation trying to drill up certain things politically from people who don't want to speak. So you
Yeah.
have to learn how the craft of getting that information out. The
Yeah.
next moment you're having a conversation with somebody who's so down to earth. The next time you're having a conversation with a socialite. The next time you're having a
Yeah.
conversation with a pastor.
Oh.
So there's so much that happens within the sphere of breakfast radio
Yeah.
that is so dynamic that I can't help but say that is one of the peaks for me.
Wow.
Also, being head of radio, I think for me was it was a great learning experience. I'd never done it before. I told the CEO when he was offering me that opportunity, I've never done it before. He said, it's fine. Even I never started radio before I came
Yeah.
here. So it was great. I got to be involved in hiring processes,
Yeah.
got to be involved in enhancing the station's sound,
Mhm.
got involved in learning the technical aspects of running a radio station.
Yeah.
And again, this is from somebody who studied public relations. So
Yeah, that's
you're
exactly what
learning
I'm
on the job,
thinking. That's exactly what I'm
you know.
thinking.
So you're learning from the job. And a lot of my friends who were studio managers were at that time, they were not even in the front back side of my head to ask them for advice,
Yeah.
because some of them are so far away and
Mhm.
it doesn't even hit you. You realize all these things later. But
Yeah.
those two for me are very pivotal in terms of what I consider the peaks of my
Mhm.
broadcasting career so far. But I'm looking forward to higher peaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you're destined there because, like, wow, you're really amazing. Like, wow.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And okay, the lowest point, and how did you overcome that? What was your lowest point in your career?
Whew. I have a few of those. There's one that I won't necessarily share now, because
It's okay.
I'm going to be sharing it in a certain context
Yeah,
that I'm working on.
it's cool.
It's in a larger context, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be telling you about that whenever, because you can say I'm being ambiguous with my terminologies.
It's
Whenever
okay.
this thing that I'm planning on doing happens,
Yeah,
then I'll definitely give you a shout and I'll tell you, remember that conversation?
yeah.
This is one of them.
I will believe
But
you.
some of my lowest moments are when I had to fire someone when I was a head of radio.
Yeah.
And this is someone who was impeccable, like at their job. They were really good. And they just had this whole culture where, when you're done with your job and you're so good at it, you just sit at your computer and, you just pass time.
Yeah.
And I think people didn't really understand that he's not just using resources. He's really so good. He's just finished his stuff on time.
Yeah.
But there were so many, the back and forths was so much. And I remember one time, and it was a very painful experience, being told, I want you to relieve this guy of his responsibilities. And I tried to fight it, to be honest. I did the best that I could. But it was a very low moment for me. And I had a long conversation with the individual. And I told him, by the way, this is not because you're not good. There's a different organizational culture. And I just told him about that. I told him, it's just about organizational culture here. And I told him, just to prove to you that I am completely impressed by you and everything, I wrote him a recommendation for his next job. I wrote him a recommendation for his next job. I put myself on. I told him, if you want me maybe to be on your resume, you can put me on your resume, and I will always vouch for you because I understand what you're doing. It is just in an organizational culture that does not necessarily fit into what you're trying to do. So it is not about you. It is about the organizational culture. And I believe he's somebody who's thriving now.
Like that's really refreshing because I feel like the corporate culture, especially in the media, is really cutthroat. So the fact that you went ahead and even like recommended, that was like, wow, honorable.
It was the right thing to do because he was impeccable. He was a very, very good producer. Yeah.
So if you could do it all over again, would announcing be your career? Or why? If why yes, and why not? If no?
Absolutely. I love it. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
Every single thing about it. For me, I just feel like there's no greater honor than to have an environment where you can use your gifts and your abilities to be there for people.
Yeah.
To be a friend to people, to be that guy for them.
Yeah.
And, the guy that they can always switch on and listen to and say, this guy gets me.
Yeah.
It's for me, it's almost unmatched. And I know I'm doing voiceover now. I know I'm, running my own business, but being a broadcaster, being an announcer is absolutely brilliant for me because, like I told you, people are my passion.
Yeah.
And when you've honed your craft like I have, and you've attached it so much to people and their betterment, then you can't help but love it. I would never, ever, ever decide to not go back to broadcast. If I ever had an offer or anything like that, which there have been a few that, where it just, especially pre-COVID.
Yeah.
But I would never hesitate on an opportunity to go back to broadcast. I love that thing. Just there's a rush when you just switch on the microphone and you say, "Good morning, you're listening to David Oyuke." There's an absolute rush.
Yeah.
I would never ever hesitate to go back.
If you would, because you've said you'd come back, what would you do differently from what you've learned, like from your experiences?
I think there are a few things that I would definitely do differently. Some of them are lessons that I've learned from very low moments, and others are lessons that I've learned from victories within this space. One thing that I know for sure I would do differently is I would not, and this might sound bad, but it has a context. I tend to I'm very open.
Yeah.
I'm very open, and people can take advantage of you because of that. So I have been taken advantage of in numerous situations.
Yeah.
So I would dial down on a few things,
Yeah.
in terms of not necessarily closing myself up, but being very strategic
Mm,
about the type
yeah.
of conversations that I have, the proximity that I give myself to people.
Yeah.
Because again, in this field, you can easily develop a superhero complex. I'll just tell you that for
It's
certain.
true.
You can easily develop a superhero complex when you're talking to millions of people, on radio or on TV, and you're consistently surrounded by, probably even in the environment that we have in Kenya, people who are fighting for their dreams, and there's a lot of hopelessness, and there's a lot of all these things.
Yeah.
Then you can find yourself being taken advantage of either by people, or even within your own circles,
Yeah.
where those things have happened. So I would be a bit more strategic, where I would understand this context do not necessarily share the fullness of something.
Mm,
Don't take on too much of that burden. If somebody
yeah.
has a challenge, direct them to the right person. I started doing that in the latter stages of my career, where I would say, you know what, I'm not able to handle this. Let me direct you to somebody else,
Yeah.
you know. And especially the type of person that I am. People listen to me and they're like, I can relate to you, all those type of
Mm,
things,
yeah.
from colleagues to bosses
Yeah.
to the audience, and they can get very overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I would put my mind and myself as a person and my family, at the core of a lot of the decisions that I make.
Yeah.
By that time, I didn't have my daughter, and I did, we weren't the type of family that we are now. And so
Mm,
my perspectives have changed. I
yeah.
have to look out for them. I have to look out for myself. To be a great broadcaster, you need to be great emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. So I'll also try to find that level of balance where I'm impeccable at the job, I'm professional at the job, I'm being who I'm authentically being to be there for people,
Yeah.
but at the same time to understand that I can't take up everything.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the things that I would change.
Wow, that was powerful. So, lastly, what have you learned from being a professional an announcer or like in radio, and what advice would you give someone who's trying to get here? Okay, I'll say myself because I'm really passionate
Um,
about
uh,
radio, and
mm,
I'm not really like social. Like you also said, you also have antisocial tendencies on your podcast. So I'm really antisocial,
mm,
especially because when like I undergot the grief, I really just collapsed into myself. So
yeah.
what advice would you give me like to yeah? Because like in communication, you're told you need people, you need to be out there, and yet I'm here. I'm passionate about this, but I have no one in my circle. So
Mm.
what advice?
I think for me, sometimes we don't have a balance in terms of what we communicate to upcoming broadcasters,
Yeah.
because we have very different personalities.
Mm,
Broadcasting is not for the extrovert only. It's not for the introvert only.
right. Right.
It cuts across.
Yeah.
You can find, for example, I know very many late night radio hosts who are so introverted,
Yeah.
like they are so introverted, and they try to get the introverts there because you're a thinker, you probably have
Yeah.
a nice, smooth, silky voice,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. And then there's like the drive show host who is like, "Hey, my guy, my guy, you guy, my guy, my guy," like so.
Yeah.
There's different dynamics to it. So I would say first and foremost, understand who you are and the space that you're in,
Yeah.
because there are people who come alive in certain situations and there are people who shell up in certain situations. So understand those type of aspects to yourself, because like you have aptly said, I have very introverted tendencies. I love my alone time, but there are people you would never tell them that I'm an introvert. Never,
Yeah.
they would never believe you. They would never believe you. And even like when I'm on radio, when I'm on air, you wouldn't tell that I have that.
Me neither.
And you get, and it's
Yeah.
because you find the things that make you feel alive.
Mm,
And I know there's some things that can drain you, and it's part of learning. It's part of the job. Because like for a while for me, When I was still on Hot 96, I was also doing international news for Citizen TV. And there are all these stories, and you compile the stories, and I'm like, I just want to have fun, man, but then so like we found a balance to that where yes, you would talk about stuff that's happening in different countries and political instability and all these type of things, but then you would also create a spot where you can talk about movies and things like those so that it's more balanced. So I would say for someone like you who you're saying that this is your type of personality, first of all, understand that there's a space for that personality. Don't develop a victim mentality, because some people develop a victim mentality and they say there's no space for me. Well, will I never be able to do what I'm supposed to do? Don't develop that victim mentality. Understand that there's a spot and there's a position for every single person, because broadcast is not for a specific type of personality or person. Number two, develop your craft. Don't stop reading, don't stop researching, don't stop learning. Because it's one thing to have the talent, but it's another thing to be effective. There are very many people who are very talented, but they fall by the wayside because they don't do their research. They end up looking like they have no idea what they're talking about when you're in a conversation with someone, and you're like, oh, sorry, I didn't know about that. I'm sorry. And you keep on. So do your research, because a large percentage of what we do is research based. Even the most fun people who sound and make it look like there's nothing to it, those are actually some of the best researchers. I'll tell you that for certain. You listen to our breakfast radio hosts, you listen to our drive radio hosts. Let me tell you, these guys do research. And just because something is done simply or with so much fun and finesse doesn't mean that there is no hard work behind it. For everything that looks simple, there's more hard work that went into it. There's structure, there's content development, there's all those things. So that's the bulk work. That really is the bulk work. And then the other is you just coming to bring your authentic self to implement it. So that's one thing that I would say. Be authentic, but also do the work. Do the work, do the work.
Wow. Wow. I've learned so much from like this interview, and I can't wait to like implement this in my own life. And it's a I'm really honored to have you like today, and
Thank you.
for your time. And I'll also like to ask for your written consent, because I will edit this and like upload it on YouTube. I'll send you a link by email. But I'm really grateful for your time and all these lessons that I've learned. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. And before we conclude, I just want to add one thing. Um, find find mentors as well. I think that's pivotal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this field has a lot of people with ego. I'm sorry.
It's true.
And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, if you're one of those people who doesn't have ego and all that, you end up feeling like you're ruffling the boat and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
for the sake of the next generations that are coming, we need to be there for people. We
Yeah.
need to, I've only been in broadcast for 8 years, but I'm always open to have conversations with people about the things that I've learned.
Yeah.
So it's also a challenge to my fellow broadcasters, my fellow announcers, my fellow media practitioners. Find opportunities to give back to the next generation.
Yeah.
Um, it's extremely pivotal that we do that, especially in the landscape that we're in right now, with a lot of misinformation, with a lot of yellow journalism and
Yeah.
clickbait being the order of the day, and everybody wanted to become famous by any means necessary. Then
Right.
you lose the heart of what we're trying to do. When
Yeah.
we don't stand up and take responsibility and hold the shirt by the collar and say we are going to stand up for the truth in this profession,
Yeah.
and we're going to live by what is right. We're going to stand by truth and not misinformation. If
Yeah.
we don't do that, then in the next few years we will see a horrendous situation in this whole field,
Yeah.
where everybody will be so consumed with firefighting misinformation,
Yeah.
where you'll find more than three quarters of our work will be dealing with misinformation, than
Yeah.
actually giving information.
Yeah.
And so for me, if we can do the mentorship, if we can do the work, if we can talk to people, tell them about the soul and the heart of what we do and why we do it,
Yeah.
to kind of restore that level of balance. And then lastly, I want to shout out Leonard Mambombotela.
Yeah.
One of my greatest moments on radio was when he called in. It was in Radio Africa, Classic 105, my early days. I think this was literally almost a week of me being on air. And he called in live. I was
Yeah.
playing a UB40 song,
Yeah.
and he was with his family, and he said that he absolutely loves it. He almost parked the car on the side to just enjoy the show. I want to say thank you, Leonard, and get well soon. I heard that you are unwell. Get
Yeah.
well soon, and thanks, John, for this interview.
Thank you so much for your time. And wow, thanks for your time. And
You're welcome.
so yeah, this is like goodbye.
Peace. And
Cheers.
talk soon.
Sure, for sure. I'll keep correspondence.
All right. Thanks, John.